8 pounds of rock and roll, except it doesn't rock and it doesn't roll, thanks to someone with an overambitious use of a welding rod. Let's see what we can do about that. Bergmann MP-18, first submachine gun, I'm guessing. I don't know that much about the history. The history guys are going to talk all about this gun, except they can't talk about it until we do our thing. Our thing is going to involve cutting some welds, which I'm about to show you. But in this particular case, it's all here. It's just been attacked with a welding rod. And what we're going to attempt to do is a little bit of machining work here and see if we can't bring this gun back. Now, for all you guys that are wondering, yeah, it's papered. Yeah, this is 100% legitimate. We've got everything we got to have to be able to touch this stuff. It's not something I ever thought I was going to be able to do. And I mean, I hadn't touched a full auto anything until I began my association with C&R Arsenal and the Citadel, of all people. And I got an opportunity to hang around with some people and do really, really cool things, but they're just machines. They're just machines, and you can fix one, you can fix them all. Okay, we're gonna go over to the to the tight camera and show you that the bolt face has been destroyed. I'll give you an uptight on that. Firing pin's still in one piece. It's gonna need a little bit of help. Floating firing pin on this thing. This firing pin is actually floated to allow you to take the ejector up. This is what I'm thinking. You can take the extractor up and snap it over around in the chamber and have a prayer of getting it out if you got out of sequence without having to have the firing pin attempting to have it go off in your hand while you're at it. All right, that piece is screwed up and this piece is screwed up. So we're gonna get in here now. I'm gonna come in tight. I'm gonna walk around the corner here. So I'm over here at the uptight camera, and you can see that pile of weld. A welding rod has been jammed in the back end of this thing, and it got the chamber, it got everything. I mean, it got, oh my God, there's weld all the way up. Here, let me refocus that and let you see that. There's weld all the way up inside the chamber. This thing is bad. We're gonna do a quick whiteboard, and I'm gonna show you what I think is going on in here, but that has to get taken care of. And then there's this issue right here where this weld was just, they blew a hole in it. They blew right here. This is all blowback. This has got slag down in it. It's got everything up in here. And of course, because of that, the extractor, which is just a big spring that rides right in here, you can see this lollipop right there where that would be pushed down and slide that out. That's supposed to be kind of looks like an upside down, like a dovetail, right over there by my knuckle. You can see how that's kind of dovetailed. The extractor would sit in there. It's just a great big spring that does this. I'll draw it, but those two items have to be repaired. And what I'm thinking, we ordered this really, really hairy looking cutter here. So we've got a cutter that's exactly the OD of this cutter is the ID of this receiver, and that's what we're going to try to come up with. And then Machinist Rick made me this really, really, really epic boring bar. The subsequent visual on this didn't come out very well, but there was an annular weld right where my thumb is. You can see the ejection port there on the gun. There's an annular weld that they had used to weld up the entire back of the barrel, and what this cut's going to do is punch through this weld. So here's the plan. The plan is going to be this has to stay on because we can't get this forward sling swivel lug out because the barrel's welded in. So it's all trapped together. So what I want to do, we're just going to let this outside piece flop around. We're going to hold the tool in the chuck. We're going to spin the tool and then run the tool in. This tool has exactly the right ID, and we're going to run this tool all the way up, and then we're going to start cutting weld. num num num. We'll nibble the weld out, and we'll cut the annulus. And as soon as we break through the weld, there was a screw holding it in. I don't know if the screw is still there or not, but even if it is, we can't see the head of it, so we don't know where the 3 Charlie part went through. So once we break through, the barrel will still be attached to this, and the whole thing should fall out on the table. And that's kind of what I'm counting on, is that the barrel will just fall out of this thing. And then we can get about reverse engineering the pieces that were broken. We know it's an independent piece because we actually saw serial number up in here. So, I don't know, without further ado, let's go spin this pig. For all you career machinists out there, this setup is going to scare the heck out of you. But remember, this is a one-of-a-kind MP-18 tube. And if anything grabbed, I didn't want it to twist this tube up like a pretzel. So in the beginning, I said we were going to spin the tool and hold the work. But in this case, I decided to use a couple of aluminum pads inside that 4-jaw headstock, and then grab the tool very lightly in the Jacobs chuck on the left side. I did that specifically so it would all spin. So I'm well aware of the fact you're not supposed to treat a Jacobs chuck like that, but a $300 chuck versus a unobtainium body tube was not an option. Extremely light cuts here, lots of stoppages for chip clearance and oil. The whole thing was sloppy, but as you will see here in the future, it does work. The tension in the room during this evolution was palpable because of the absolute downside that could have happened if we'd have made a mistake here. Casey and Bruno were standing in the back of the room gnawing on their fingernails, and the minute this thing popped through, we quit, went down, and had a hydraulic launch with some ribs to wash the beer down. That was just one of those kind of days. It probably took 15 minutes to make this cut because I was going so slow. So we're just going to fade through this here a little bit and show you that the cutter indeed did its job. Well, the biggest part of the first half is done. This, you talk about sphincter factor, man. I was clutching it when we were doing this. We took an annular cutter and we cut that weld away and just popped this whole piece out. So that'll take us on to the next part of this. And if that's the case, then we'll catch you guys on the backside. We don't really know whether or not we're going to stitch all this into one piece or not. But in case we didn't, I just wanted to, this is a convenient jumping off point, and it's been a pleasure. We'll catch you guys in a little bit, and stand by for updates. This is a spring in here. The whole thing, this is the extractor, and it extends down into the face. It's welded, so what I've done is pried up the back end of it, and I'm attempting to break the weld loose by just kind of calibrating it a little bit and seeing if I can't get the weld to just rip. It's coming. The original piece of the weld, the original ejector piece, extractor, God, listen to me, I'm tripping over my own words here, extends down inside of this housing. So when they welded up the front, they didn't have the common courtesy to take the extractor out. So I'm beginning to rip the welds here. I'm just going to keep going. You're going to see me hacking around here a little bit. Yeah, it's beginning to rip them loose. If I keep hitting on it, it'll probably come out. The issue here is that I have to stay clear. This part here that's sticking down, that's supposed to be in, has to be kept clear. And trying to do all this and not snap this spring, because I wouldn't mind using this piece again. This is a barrel blank, and we're going to go ahead and cut this barrel blank down to match this. Now, it doesn't have to be exact here, machinist guys. I'm going to tell you what, the distance from here to here has got to be close within a couple of thousandths, but it doesn't have to be right on the money, because these parts will never be interchangeable to a standard MP-18. There just aren't enough of them around. So whether or not that collar, and that collar is all supposed to be 1 diameter, and this is the part we cut out, like we said the last time. I've got to make another one of these collars, and then the collar fits on the back end of that right there. So the barrel plugs into it, and then the front piece, and as I'm talking, I keep going over here looking for pieces that aren't over here for me to go get, so that I'll show it to you later. There's a front piece that screws into the front end of this thing that traps all of this, and then there's a set screw that goes through the side of the receiver wall that taps this. So we need to make another one of these rear rings, make another barrel, unscrew up the rear end of this bolt, and then we're gonna have to do a little bit of welding work here and put a new tip on this extractor, and we'll see if we can make this extractor work and not have to make this hateful piece of thing all over again. And we'll go from there. This isn't gonna be a show where I'm gonna do a whole lot of talking. We're just gonna go grind some sausage. Well, there's all the pieces we have to do. We did a little bit of welding to restore the tip to the extractor. This was a lot of fun. And then once we got the extractor kind of welded up, we had to go after this bolt face. And don't underestimate how hard this rod was they welded this thing with. It was very hard. So incredibly, ridiculously sharp lathe tools. And we weren't going this fast. We've got this sped up just to show you how many cuts it took. Here we go. Now it's starting to bite out on the face. You can see that there it is. Yeah, look at that. As we began to cut down through this, the firing pin hole will rematerialize eventually, and if not, we'll have to cut. So this is what I meant about not having to nail the headspace directly on. How thick this bolt is, where it stops in the frame, and the thickness of the trunnion ring, all of that determine the headspace. Yeah, I know. I got a milling machine bit clamped in a regular drill bit chuck. Well, all I was trying to do was just hog some of this out. I went in and cleaned it up in a more precision format later. Remember that when you're gunsmithing, it's also about the amount of time that it takes. You can make all these perfect setups, and by the time you get your setup made, I'm 1 or 2 guns on down the line. We're plunging in with a center drill now in order to pop the hole for the firing pin, and we're just going to clean it out. And it was surprising, beyond the damage on the face of the bolt, there wasn't much. I had actually done some weld buildup on this to clear the undercutting, and then cut back to clean metal, and it works. It worked. The whole thing, almost when it's all said and done, was actually quite a successful project, but sphincter factor all over this thing. Yeah, we're in. That was it. We poked through into the original firing pin hole. Hoorah. Gotta love that. We're over at the up-close camera now, and you can take a look and you can see that we've cleaned up the ejector slot. We've cleaned up, the extractor slot, the ejector slot that runs up the bottom. We've milled a new recess in here for the cartridge case, which is about 60 thousandths of an inch deep. And that bad boy just sits in there like that. And I'm going to tell you what, brother, that is a day's work. So what do we got left? We've got to do the barrel, and we've got to do the sleeve, and then I have to weld a nose on this ejector. Yeah, we'll go slow. Right about there. Oh, baby, you gotta love that. So I've mounted the extractor, I'm sorry. The extractor, I'm mounting it in the vise because all I want to do is put a blob of weld all the way across the front of this and possibly out here on the nose. And the reason why hang on a minute, I'm not pointing with the appropriate device. There we go. So I'm gonna just put a blob of weld here. And if I'm not successful, I'll wind up facing this whole thing back and just welding a piece of metal on it. But I'm holding it in a vise because I want to bleed all the heat off because I don't want to draw the temper here on this spring. So we'll mount it here and we're going to see whether or not we are just going to fry these cameras with all of this light. All right, where did I put that little piece of welding rod? Here we go. Now this welding rod does this arc gizmo does not have a high frequency start feature. So I have to touch the work. I can hear all you guys screaming now. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. But I'll have to touch the work in order to strike the arc. So here we go. Did a lot of welding work on the extractor after we had cut it loose, and now the bolt's done. The extractor will hang on to the cartridge. This is good. This is what it needs to do. We made an adapter plate that goes on the back, and we had to cut all that loose. What's left is a barrel, and just to find out how I put the fun in dysfunctional. I'm being very careful here to not move the cross slide, not move anything. I'm just sneaking into this. Another couple of thou and we're going to be there. This has to be flush. And once that's flush, the chamber's already cut. And we're setting headspace now. should be us right there. There should be just enough room when we're all done here for the extractor to sneak up under there. So it should just be a tad proud. Bang, we're there. That's us right there. I don't know how well this comes out, but the old barrel is 1/4 of an inch too short. It's that much too short, and that's how much weld we had to face off. But this is the orientation it's sitting in right now, so you can begin to see what we're developing. Next thing we'll do, we'll take this thing out. Well, we're gonna part it off first. We'll part it off, flip it over, cut the small end in that fits down, that the muzzle cap holds on, and then set the exact distance from this ring to that ring, and then we know we got it set where we want it. Any second now. Before this breaks through, I want to show something here. I do not, you can't see it. I do not have a center sticking up behind this thing. There's no center in the back end of it. So when this breaks, it'll just drop free. If you've got it spared in between centers, it'll pinch the tool and spoil the work and destroy the tool. So when it drops loose, it'll just drop free. Yut! All right, there's the chamber, there's the breech end, here's the breech ring right there, and now we're gonna hold it right where my fingers are and go ahead and work on the muzzle a little bit, which we just parted off, and then we'll crown it and we'll be good. That's my mark. Right there is my mark. Right there. Okay. Yep, right there. That's us. Perfect. Outstanding. To recap, we made a barrel that I haven't cut the taper on yet because I want to have some fallback position. I don't want to limit my options yet. So we're going to attempt to test fire with the actual, we didn't cut the center out of it. It doesn't matter, it'll run fine. We got a firing pin that's long enough. We made a rear barrel trunnion and welded a feed ramp onto it. We took the bolt face, welded up all of that damage, and ground it down so that you could actually operate it. We took the existing extractor and were able to maintain the spring tension and build up enough material on the front end that it's probably going to work. All I got left now is to go find a place that's going to allow me to shoot this. We'll hunt around. I will advise. It might be the next episode. You don't know, but we'll take a look for it. All right, this is where we get paid. Something like that. That was a blast. Loud, intense, and I couldn't put my thumb on the feeling I had there, and I figured it out last night. I haven't felt like I've been around 100% competent people since I was on that submarine, and that was a feeling I haven't had in a long time. I was safer at a range with 1.5 million rounds of ammo expended in 2 days than I was driving there. We learned a couple of other things. First of all, the sleeves we had and the repop magazines we had, Bruno got on his little CNC printing gizmo and made us up a couple of, let me see here if I can figure out how the heck that works. There we go, right there. Made us up some CNC printed sleeves so that we didn't have to use our original sleeve. And not only that, he sucked all the slop out of it, because 100 years of people playing John Wayne with this thing, they had kind of messed that up. So we had a repop mag that worked. We had some of Bruno's stuff that was printed. The big one was this. The spring that was in this gun was 100 years old, and it had taken a little bit of a set, and all of the reciprocating mass was hitting the rear end of the action, and it eventually hit this thing hard enough, like on every other bolt action rifle you've ever seen, it blew this chip out of the stock. 20 minutes after it blew out, we figured out it was missing. 20 minutes after that, Bruno finds fat laying in brass that was so deep we were walking on it. Are you kidding me? The final end of this is this. I'll fix this stock. I'm going to make a new firing pin, bore the inside of it out, put a little bit thicker standard American size spring in it so that the bolt handle doesn't come all the way to the rear and that it just kind of floats into the rear. Guys, I'm an average woodworker. I'm an average machinist. I'm a below average welder. I'm average at a lot of stuff. I got an MP-18 that works. Just saying.